Well, hello and good morning, everyone. Well, I hope this daylight savings time, if you're one of those who have to endure this every year, um, that you're up and doing well. For the rest of you in the world, well, I hope you're doing well and good to see everyone. So I'm going to turn myself down over here because time travel is all right, but only in my perfect conditions. Well, good morning. So, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are on Gaia this morning. May the day be one that finds you in better mind than what you started out with. Hello, Jerry. Sardiki, good morning. Boy, I'm just saying hello to everyone. No, Jeff is helping his mother with pipes. So, got to send the dude a lot of positive energy. I don't know about you, but when anything that has to do with plumbing or electricity, always best to let those who know how to do that. So, hey, there's a couple of us in here. Good morning. Hope everything is going well. So, last Friday, I was supposed to have Trisha on. We had unexpected guests show up and had to cancel that. Last night, I was going to have Sovereign Key on, and, well, let me just say about this. When they say call before you dig, and when you live in neighborhoods, subdivisions, someone along the chain is going to be the node. And from there, that's where you get your cable, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we had some people that were putting in a garden and clipped the lines. And so left some of us without internet. And isn't that a weird experience? Wow, there's 69 of us in here. Tim, good morning. Boar, good morning. Judy, good morning. Deb L, good morning. Cynthia, good morning. Adam, good morning. Wow, Rich, hello, everyone. Good, hello from Canada. Good to see you. Welcome. Again, I'll be flying solo on this. Chai tea. I'm telling you, folks, if you want something that helps cleanse your blood out and just is really good for you, that tea is like some of the best. So, got tomatoes going. Wow. I think that is wonderful. So, just so everyone knows, February 23rd, we will have, and I think I'm saying this, I think it's Ladu, Sovereign Key. Go over there, check out the channel. Well, Brian, good morning. Good morning. Speaking of Milky Way Weekly, I'm actually going to be on his channel this week and as a guest. So we'll get that nailed down, and let's just go over there and flood his channel and get him new subscribers. So a lot of strange, now let me rephrase that. So often we hear the term, a lot of strange things going on. But I often wonder, are they really strange, or is it just that it's part of change? And change is inevitable. And change, no matter in what form it comes in, is always unsettling. We're creatures of habit. But the thing about it is that the very thing that we want, such as a routine, such as a habit, is actually a deterrent to us. I contend this, ladies and gentlemen, it is impossible for the human soul to be satisfied, because once satisfaction is obtained, it begins to deteriorate. There's no longer any challenge. There's no longer any purpose. And I contend that that's what happens to so many of us, is that we sometimes, and I'm myself included here, we get off the track? I don't know. It's just a thought. So change is inevitable. I think even in the next life. Now, I don't know. I've never talked to anyone that actually has been there and come back. Good morning, Don. Good morning, Judy, Becky. Hello, Rocker Chick. But I think that in order for existence, you're always going to be challenged. I'm reading, so everyone knows, the Urantia book, and I can send you the PDF of this, and it's very interesting. You know, I've come to the place in my life where the concept of God, I reject all forms of human construct of the form of God, because no matter what human is behind the idea, it's corrupt. Well, I wouldn't say corrupt. I don't think it could ever be perfect. I don't know what perfection is. It's one of those terms that is so loosely thrown around, you know, oh, that's just perfect. You ever heard that? Or, you know, you can't leave it until it's perfectly done. I can tell you the fallacy, there are no perfect mates. No matter, you may have the foundation, but you have to work at it. It's a challenge. The great thing about it, though, if you succeed in a personal relationship where it begins to last years, it actually is resilient against change, it continues to grow, then you've accomplished a great deal in this life. It's a tremendous challenge, relationships, because it requires such an examination of self. And again, as you enter in, for myself, into the next stage of life, which is a privilege, by the way, you begin to find out that the benefit of all that struggle, of all that strain, is that you have a very comfortable, satisfying relationship. But satisfying is only defined in the term of the moment. So anyway, that's just my opinion. And that's why I do a Thursday night show called the Steiger Perspective. There you go. Hi, Sandra D. How are you? Hey, your package is coming this week, just to let you know. So we're going to cover a lot. Let's see, it's 7:08 my time here in Colorado. Thomas, good to see you. So, in the weeks to come, how many of you are aware of the practice of smudging? In fact, I've gotten a book here, and excuse me, I do have a sore throat. Just want to let you all know that. But we're going to get into this. This is not today so much. I'm still absorbing it, but I was led by my spirit to look into this. And, you know, it's a practice that I think I can agree with. How many of you know anything about smudging? Sandra, do you know anything about that? Yeah, it is very warm in Colorado. You do it weekly. Okay. Well, we're going to have you on then. And we're going to go through, let's do that. Email me, Sandra, or call me, and we're going to get that going. I think it's wonderful. I can tell you this, crystals have tremendous energy. I mean, I'm learning about this. Now, I've heard about this most of my life, but really never gave it much credence. I was off in a different direction and gaining knowledge in different manners. So the power of crystals. Wow. I think there's amazing knowledge here that we need to have more knowledge of. And so we're going to get into that as well. Sage, yeah, and that's what, in fact, what I'm waiting for right now is the sage smudges, I guess the bundles. And they're supposed to be cured and the whole bit. So I'm not well versed in that, but Sandra D is, and I think we'll get you on. Sandra, if you got time this week, let me know. We'll do a show on that. All right. So this weekend has been odd in the way that discussions, as I have been out intermingling with the populace, and this show is starting to get a little notoriety. It was actually at a place yesterday, and it's amazing to me how many different perceptions of reality in a religion there exist within what is supposed to be a single construct that everyone can basically found foundation to believe on. Excuse me. And so I have produced a couple of videos. One is, and you can go read the comments, see for yourself. I leave them up there, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. Let's see, I'm a heretic, false prophet, I think the Antichrist himself. If not, I'm in league with him, or it, I'm not sure which. And I have blasphemy. So according to some, I am well on my way to my reservation in eternal hell and damnation. Good, Sandra. I'm seeing the delay on this. So folks, it's that on the real-time chat. So that's why you should never text and drive at the same time. It's distracting. So check out if you want. You don't have to, there a lot of people have already. I had one video I did that said that Lucifer is not Satan. And when did Satan get a promotion? Read the comments. The other one, two creations, two worlds. Read the comments. Breaking the God spell. Read the comments. My whole point to this is, by reading the comments, it would be very difficult to determine what is a foundational belief, particularly where Christianity is concerned, Judaism, the belief in devils, demons, angels, is striking. Listen, if any of you are studying sociology or wanting to go to school, I know one who's potentially working on a PhD. All you have to do is read the comments in some of these videos I've done. Because what you're going to get is a full, broad spectrum of society and their beliefs. And it amazes me. Oh, Carmen, well, thank you. And by the way, I want to stress something. I just want to let you know, and it's right here in my notes. The whole purpose of this journey, there's a lot of parts to it, a lot of tendrils that go out. But I believe at the core of our journey here, if you can walk out when it's your time and say, I have learned forgiveness And not only forgiveness, I've learned acceptance. I think you will get an A on your report card. And I think you'll get the ticket that says, well, guess what? You accomplished this because you're going to need this for what awaits there. I don't think it ends. This Urantia book, deep, 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 deep. I'm just telling you right now, you start talking about some of the concepts in this book to people and they immediately, you can hypnotize them. How many of you seen The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? The Vorgon? It's like them reading poetry. It's serious. But it's deep. It's deep. The only problem I have with this book, and we're going to get a group. I've got 4 people, and I think that we'll wait to see if a couple more will join, because this is the type of book that takes small groups. You can't do it on a large scale. You lose people. That requires a different way of thinking. Now, my problem with it is that I still see this male hierarchy, Father, Son, Spirit. And, you know, inside of me now, I'm going, you know what? What I have seen in this temporal plane is that you can't have a dominance on one particular gender, either through an idyllic, theoretical, or theological, and have it balanced. I don't see it. Female creates life. And that's just where I've come from today. Things are subject to change. But the fact is that when you see us change, we all change. And if you doubt my veracity on that statement, go back and look at a picture of you 20 years ago, and you tell me that that's the same person. Now you're going to say, yeah, but I've changed. Yeah, we have. We all do. So I was drawn into a conversation about Lucifer. And wow, you know, lots and lots of ideas on this one. We all have an opinion. Now, unfortunately, most never take the time to reconstruct what they're told and what reality is. Of course, reality is subjective. So, excuse me. One of the books I would recommend, depending on where you are in your philosophy journey, you know, the pursuit of philosophy is the embrace of all ideas. This is what I love about philosophy, is that if you develop a philosopher's heart, you can manifest that in so many different disciplines. I truly think the infinite being is the first philosopher. I mean, who would have more time to pontificate upon an idea? I don't know. Original thought, I would think. So here's what I see happening. If you want to have a good book, by the way, depending on how your tilt goes, give me 1 second here, folks. So this is a book that I find interesting. Now, whether, you know, again, all books are a work of the author. No matter what we read, someone synthesized that into what we call the written word. In the Urantia book, you learn that there is God, the thought, God, the word, God, the idea. seven different levels of what deity is in divinity. Now, in this book, Thomas Horn contends that all the Christians got it wrong. They failed to truly understand what Revelation was about. And the contention is this: they're going to kill each other because there's so many schisms, so many fractures within the faith itself. No one knows what they're believing anymore. And if you doubt me, go back and look at those videos. Just read the comments. One of them's got over 600 comments because people get so wrapped around the axle about this imaginary being called Lucifer. Now, I say imaginary, and do you see this board up here, folks? Let me get my hand. You see, I never erased that. That's a synthesis of about a year's work of research, synthesized down into very simple concepts of thought. And the fact of the matter is, in the Hebraic faith, Lucifer doesn't exist. In fact, it's very difficult to find any reference, except, and I'm going to share something with you. So give me 1 second. I believe that this is it. Yes. All right. So I thought that this was a good way. Lucifer means light bearer and morning star. In pre-Christian mythology, he is called Shehar, Hael, and Isovorsus, the dawn bearer. He is not the fallen angel or a name for the devil, but the morning aspect of the planet Venus. Venus is also personified as a goddess called Aphrodite in Greek. There is no need to fear Lucifer or Venus. But here's what the real interesting thing is. And I'm going to show you something. The Christians worship Lucifer. Yeah, I know people are going to go back crazy when they hear that one, but there it is. Every Easter, the Catholic Church opens in Mass with this prayer. It's flame alight, O Lucifer, the morning come. And he, I say, O Lucifer, who does not know the going down thereof, Christ thy Son, who, returning from the grave, human race shed his peaceful light and now lives and reigns forever. And amen. How many of you knew that? Seriously. I'm just going to let this kind of soak in. This is what is reality. Now, when Martin Luther made his protest back there in the 1500s, in which we have the Protestant belief today, the Protestant church, was he laid the indictment against the Catholic Church that they were actually practicing black magic in their masses. This is where part of that comes from. So what do we have here? We also know that the Catholics, the Vatican, own the infrared. Well, they don't own it. I guess they do. The telescope that's right there in Arizona. Large binocular telescope near infrared, utility with camera and integral field unit for extragalactic research. I've contended, you can go back and look at my record. It's not what we have been led to believe. As part of this Mass, it continues on. His flame Lucifer dawning his own creation. You know, you can't have a religion unless you have an antithesis. Doesn't work. So anyway, I'll stop the share on this and get back to the subject at hand. So, what's going on? I mean, obviously, it's not what we have been led to believe. And that was part of my research, was that, you know, whether you, and there's just so many books I brought here to begin. This is a great book, goes back and contends that what I am contending, that we really don't know what we worship. We really don't understand what we worship. And I think that that's part of this awakening process, is that when we begin to find out the foundation to a lot of this, we begin to find out that what it's done, and I'll just speak for myself, it's pacified me. I mean, it's like you go through with this elitist, you know, attitude that, you know, you are owed everything. And so you walk around with the old chip on your shoulder. Well, I know my rights. You don't know who I am. I mean, how many of us see that? And we all did it at one time. Heck, all of us like to feel like we're the VIP, you know, of the ME, because that will make us the B. But we don't stop there. So I got into this conversation beginning to tell people some things about what reality is. For instance, and I know this is Sunday, and so we can talk about these kind of things because this is not your normal Sunday morning program. It's amazing to me how many people, and I did for a long time. So that's why I can point the finger right back at me, you see. Yeah. I thought that the Bible was an historical document, historically accurate document. And I'd have defended it. I think I probably did in my younger years. But you begin to realize that it's not. It's a literary piece of work. And what they do on this is that it's how any great novel is written. Those of you who are writers know this, that in order to give your story a sense of reality to the reader, what you would do was apply your storyline, your whatever the event was, and you drop it into a real historical setting. How many of you, I'm just trying to think, Shakespeare, right off the hand, top of my head, Dickens. I mean, I love Charles Dickens as a kid. Great Expectations, The Tale of Two Cities. I mean, Dickens I loved him. I could go places. I could go back to 19th century London and walk the streets. You could almost feel the cobblestones and, you know, yeah. But that's how you write a good story. And you drop this into events. And that's what we have. And it's amazing to me how many people will defend that when you try to say, no, it didn't happen. I had this discussion yesterday. And as I was telling these people, I said, if most people really realized what real history was, for instance, let's talk about, we're coming up on Easter. We saw what Catholic Mass does for Easter. Lucifer, that Jesus is Lucifer's son. Wow. That's great mind coitus. I don't care what anyone says. That's good mind coitus. I keep hearing people use that term now, and I just laugh. But if you look at, for instance, if anyone really wants to read a great book on the history of how what really happened through the Roman record, that's the one thing I always marvel at, is that I ask people, I said, well, all right, then tell me, who was the general at the time of the alleged point of when Jesus was walking this earth? Tell me what was happening in Judea, and I'll get very specific with you. Tell me who was the main person in Roman history in 30 AD in Judea, on the eastern of the empire. Does anyone know? I'll just kind of let everyone say, hi, Kenneth, how you doing? So does anyone know who was one of the main characters who was really living history? But it's amazing how history of the consciousness of humanity doesn't know or can't even recall. Well, I'll tell you who it was. Vespasian. Who knows who Vespasian is? Nobody. Well, I'll tell you who Vespasian was. He was the general that the Gospels were written after. For instance, they use this thing, Roman writers and what we call the best spell masters use this thing called typology. And in this case, if you read about the exploits of Vespasian in his campaign in Judea, right around the turn of the century, you're going to be surprised. Who did he capture? That so many people rely on the history, because oddly enough, the first century, we have so little actual records that exist. Now, after the first century, we begin to have a plethora of records, but during the first century, it seems to be devoid. Well, I'll tell you who Vespasian captured. A guy by the name of Josephus, who was a renegade general, who'd been causing the Romans a lot of problems, a lot of deaths. I mean, could you imagine sending back to Rome your body count? Well, we lost 10,000 in this battle due to an ambush. 10,000 human beings. Now, this is what's so weird. So today, both Jews, Christians, and Muslims will to a great degree rely on the writings of Josephus, the Antiquities of the Jews, the Jew Wars. Read them. You'll learn. You'll learn from a Roman perspective, though. And this is the weird thing about it. So here is the tradition that when you were captured as a general in the Roman army, you were going to be humiliated, first of all. You most likely were going to be put into chains, and you were going to be sent to Rome. And then you were going to be stripped naked, and you were going to be the head of the procession. That's how they did it back then. Total humiliation. Well, and if you resisted that, well, you were going to die. Now, crucifixion wasn't the primary method of the Romans. They didn't have time for that crap. Yeah, yes, they did use crucifixion as a great means of, how should we say, deterrent of public opinion. Seriously. But they had much better ways to put you to death. And as a general, they were going to take their pound of flesh and a little bit more. So Josephus says, wait a minute. And this is what he said. According to history, Caesar Vespasian. And Vespasian said, what are you talking about? I am not Caesar. And Josephus said, "Oh, but you will be." Now, he made a prophecy. This intrigued Vespasian. Vespasian had a God complex already to begin with. And his acts, I mean, if you, like I said, you have, I'll give you a case in point. In the book of Mark, you have the scene at the demonic at the Gerardines. And the demonic is sitting there, and supposedly Jesus comes in and casts out 3,000 demons, right? And they all run into the pigs, and the pigs all run into Lake Gerardines. There is no Sea of Galilee. There is no inland sea in Israel. Never has been. What that was in reality, that was Vespasian's soldiers putting to the sword 3,000 renegade Jews that were attacking them. They were near the cities of the necropolises, and as Vespasian's forces cornered their into, there was only this lake that was there. And so Vespasian had sent small boats out on the lake, and they had these darts. Now, the darts in the Romans in the field had in their shields could hold about 10 darts. They were lead, they had a point on them, and they could throw them in an opponent's in the water or even the battlefield, and they would go right through they would crack your skull if they hit you or break your bone. So they had these boats, and so here these 3,000 renegade Jews were being basically cornered into nothing but the lake out there, the water, and they died. But that was transposed to a work of a miracle of the demoniac. So let me continue this. So Josephus, now he took a gamble. I'll say this, the man had some balls, but oddly enough, 3 months later, Vespasian was called back, and within 6 months was in fact voted in as Caesar, emperor. And his son, Titus, and I believe his brother Tychus, Titus took over the campaign in eliminating the Jew problem. And that's what it was. It was a Jew problem. I mean, these people, when we have skirmishes today, we would find it absolutely barbarism because these people were dying by the thousands in these battles. And long story short, Titus, when his father died, Titus went back and was made Caesar, but he petitioned the Senate to make Vespasian a god. And the Senate approved it. And so in historical Roman records, Vespasian is a god, which made Titus the son of God. Here I've been talking more on this. Maybe some of you want to hear this, maybe not, but I'll continue on it. So there never was in 33-35 AD a Messiah that was named a Yeshua. There is no record of it. Now, the possibility could exist, though, because according to Josephus, there were many messiahs, many of them reporting to do miracles. And we know this because if you read the first chapter of the book of Acts, when Peter and John were arrested by the Sanhedrin Council, right? Why didn't Caiaphas know of Jesus? It was Caiaphas that was the one who started pulling, supposedly, the hair out of his beard. And you see right there how it starts getting a little screwy because there was no record of this. But in reality, there were many, but there was no crucifixion recorded. Now, history does record a crucifixion, oddly enough, in 69 AD, right before Jerusalem was completely decimated. And it was Titus who went into the temple. But how did Titus know where to go to get the sacred records and all the utilities, the instruments of their holy worship. They had a traitor named Josephus, who was in Rome at this time. And by the way, do you know what Josephus's proper full name is? Flavius Josephus. He took on the name of the family for which he is forever indebted to. And so when Ebenezer was crucified on Golgotha, yeah. You see, how the story came about was simply in a time that, remember, who knows what happened with the siege of Jerusalem? Amazing to me how many people do not study actual history. So Titus and the entire, virtually of the Eastern Legion. Now, Vespasian had a 150,000 plus foot soldier army. You don't read about that in the New Testament. You know, you read the story replete with a Roman captain, with Roman proctors, etc. But you see, that's why the book is not an historical document. It's a story set into a time that was where Judea was in war. That's why Josephus wrote it. The Antiquities of the Jew Wars. This battle with Rome was not what Cecil B. DeMille depicted it. It was bloody, brutal. So I'll continue with this in case y'all don't want to read the story, but this is how it ended up. So the thing about the Jews of that day, they were crafty. They were kicking Rome's butt. I mean, when you're losing tens of thousands of soldiers, it makes it very difficult to recruit back in a home. Come join the Roman army. You're going to love it. No, you'll see historical sites. You'll be making history. They'll be reading about you thousands of years down the road. No, it didn't work that way. And it became a problem. Became very expensive for Rome. And we don't think about it, history in those terms, but that's how history is, even for us. Every nation, look at what we spend on the military today. We just are more, how should we say, we anesthetic the process, taking all the pain out of it. Bloody, you know. So anyway, so they start building this wall. Now, what most people don't realize is even it is in today in the Middle East, trees are very rare. I mean, you just don't go and cut trees down. I mean, you know, people had done that for 1,000 years over there, and, you know, it changed the whole topography. But so as the Romans started building a wall around Jerusalem. Now, here's a question. How many gates are on the city of the old city of Jerusalem? Anybody know? Anybody? Well, I'll tell you, there are 12 gates. Each of them have a special name. Each one of them have a special significance of how you enter in it, depending on the high holy day or whatever. So if you read the book of Nehemiah, Nehemiah will give you a very good idea how big when he rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem had been, you know, Nebuchadnezzar had come in there and this absolutely had decimated it. And nearly 26 miles in radius. Big wall. Big wall. Now imagine the Romans building an outer wall. And the thing about it is, it shows you how oppressed the people were in Jerusalem, because they couldn't fight it. And imagine if you're living in Jerusalem and you're watching this wall being built around your city. And it's a wooden wall, and it's a big one. And you're watching these Romans day after day, 24 hours a day. They continue to build this, and they restrict for nearly 3 years the Jews from worshiping Passover, Feast of the Tabernacles, the High Holy Days. Titus wouldn't allow it. Then, that fateful day, that fateful year in 70 AD, spring, Titus said, open the gates, and allowed, the word went out all through the region that the temple was open. And 1 million people, it was estimated, flooded into the city of Jerusalem. And at the moment that the high holy day of Passover, I believe this is when it was taking place, Titus closed the gates, sealed them in, lay siege to them. And since no one brought provisions in, because the custom was you would come in, you would practice the rituals, and then you would leave and you would go out into the countryside and, eat, sleep, etc. So you got 1 million people trapped in the city of Jerusalem. Food runs out very quickly, and things begin to break down faster. So much so that women were eating their children, and cannibalism was a reality. And then the fire started. And that fire, now here in Denver, Thursday we had a fire downtown on a 5-story apartment complex that was going up. The heat from that melted cars blocks away. Can you imagine the horror that these men and women and children faced when this encircling wall of fire began to fall in? The heat from it alone was in that's what people don't realize. You can have as much stone as you want, but we all know that when you subject stone to very intense temperatures, it fractures. And the Romans went in, and that's the real history. But you don't read that. And that's the problem with religion. And that's where we got in this whole discussion about Lucifer. People get so wrapped around the axle that, when you look at what really happened, you can see how so much of where people can begin to see, could you imagine if you survived that, particularly as a child? Well, you would see the Romans as demons, creatures coming from hell, because that's probably what some of that visual looked like. Romans coming in through particular areas, breaches in the wall that they knew were there. I don't know. So it's a great book. Check it out. Well worth seeing about. It is. And so while we're here, let's just talk a little bit more about history. I have another book I want to show you that just to show you sometimes how things can get a little wacky. So if anybody wants this is a PDF. You can actually go online and you can get this yourself. This is the Chaldean account of the book of Genesis. And what makes this book, this is where the creation story comes from, the Chaldean account of Genesis. And so give me a second here. I want to pull this up so we all can see a little bit bigger. I don't know why it's doing that. Well, he says. Anyway, this is a book well worth reading because George Smith was an archaeologist, worked for the British Museum, and this is the result of his discoveries. And it's quite interesting because when you read this story, you now know how the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews, took from this and added to what was their progenitor of their heritage. That today, nearly 3/4 of the world's population believes that this story actually happened. Weird, isn't it? Now, I'm going to throw you into one more little mind coitus for the day. So, how many of you have ever heard of the ball theory in Christianity? Now, Lord, Lord, literally means, word for word, ball. Does. If any of you are really into studying, you really should read this. The one group of people, and I did a video on this, the Phoenicians, we don't understand how big of a role they played in the fashioning of constructs, of religion, pantheons of different cultures, technology. But I know some people just won't dig this, but it's true that when you understand where the whole process of Baal and the worship of Baal and how it actually integrated into what today is called Christianity, modern Christianity. And the thing about it is that the Catholic Church knew. They adapted a lot of the beliefs and their traditions. Remember, Romans were Hellenist. And again, people don't study history. What happened to Judea in the year 333 AD? BC. Does anyone know? Alexander the Great conquered Judea. He set up 50 cities, outposts. And the very first thing that the Greeks did was that they Hellenized the people. And the way that you Hellenize a culture is that you don't so much squash it, is that you absorb it. You allow it to have its own functionality, but it's integrated into the entire concept. And you can see when they started digging up this, and this is the thing that I contend with people. I'm learning just as well as all the rest of us are. But here's the thing. Once we begin to learn, you're going to have to cut loose that which you thought you knew. Otherwise, it's a millstone around your neck, and it will take you down. It'll take you down the road of confusion. It'll take you down the road of agitation. And so when you begin to find other evidence that counters the one that you've believed in all your life, you've got a choice to make. And so what we have found through this was that history is not what we've been taught. Listen, I contend this, and here's my thing. And if any of you want this, let me know. I'll be more than happy to share this with you. Here's my point. If the Sumerian records are fact, great book. If you really want to read history, start reading history. If the Sumerian tablets were written by a culture, the first recognized civilization that actually put thought to stone, to tablet, then we have to take some very serious questions into play here. So I was a Christian. I believed in the Christian Bible, and I could never define God, didn't know what that was, but the construct. I didn't know that there was a culture that was even before Adam, because I can't take the story seriously if I take the genealogy, because something's wrong here. If you take the genealogy that they prose as evidence, then the Sumerian tablets numbering 100,000 now, then that's all fallacy. That's all make-believe. Because there can only be one real history here. Now, I'm going to take the one of the tablets. And here's my contention, ladies and gentlemen. And I respect all of you. There's 260 plus of us in here, and I respect everyone. You all have your own beliefs. But my contention is this. If we have a culture, a civilization of a people, a society of people, that today our society virtually mirrors their society, means we've changed virtually none in 6,500 years. But that's not what we're talking about here. But here's the point. They just so happen to be in the very place that my religion at the time said was the Garden of Eden. But it never said about these people here called Sumerians. And they had a whole different perception of God. And my contention is the Christian God isn't named in there. The Jewish God isn't named in there. The Islamic God is not named in there. The Indian God isn't named in there. And if these gods in fact exist, as most people today of the world believe they do, then why weren't they in the first book written by humans? Because this is where the reality comes down. I said this to a group yesterday. I said the reality of this, and it can only lead to one conclusion. We are still worshiping these gods of the Sumerian pantheon, or they don't exist at all. Heavy, 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 heavy. I appreciate all of you. Listen, these are the thoughts. This is what I ponder, and this is what I study. And, where each of us have our own beliefs, and mine are ever evolving. And I know that may sound a little odd, but how can you know what you do not know? I contend that there is something even above man's construct of God. There's the infinite being, whatever that is. I keep on coming down to this simple equation. The Creator has to be original thought. In the Urantia book, it teaches you about different realities, and that man is limited. In fact, our limitation on what reality truly is isn't reality. We are so, because of our religious beliefs and how they've been distorted through the millennia and adjusted to each society, what we've lost was, in fact, I think, the original knowledge. And whether we ever had it or not, I don't know. But it's very apparent just by reading this book. In fact, let me show you something. Just to give everyone a little taste here. Try this on a Sunday afternoon, because I think it might help. Urantia, by the way, is Earth. So there is a group of beings that are responsible. Look at this book. I mean, seriously. But it blows your mind away. let's just talk about the subject of deity, because this is what they hit you with right from the get-go. The universe of universes presents phenomenon of deity activities on divine levels of cosmic realities, mind meanings, and spirit values. But all of these, you ready for this? Ministrations, personal or otherwise, are divinely coordinated. Deity is in the personalization, and as personable as God is pre-personal and superpersonal in ways not altogether comprehensible by man. Deity is characterized by the quality of unity, actual or potential, on an all supermaterial level of reality. And this unifying quality is best comprehended by creatures of divinity. So the good news is, folks, we are creatures of divinity. And it goes on to define what deity is. And most people's, from this, here's something I'm going to tell you. You're right. Because all of us think about deity in, it's impossible. If I was to say, define God right now, close your eyes, and I want you to tell me what you see your picture as the infinite being is. The hardest thing you'll do if you want to get real serious. So thank you, everyone. As we leave out today, forgiveness and acceptance. I think that's the key. I thank all of you. It's been a great time. I want to leave you this thought. The gentleman wrote me this, and I think that he really nailed it in a lot of ways. I ask you, what are your true intentions for this life? What are your intentions? What is it your intent to do? Have you done it? Have your intentions been turned and used against you? The true intent of your life. What is that? All right, folks. See you tomorrow night. I may do a show later on. If I can get some things worked out, I want to go a little deeper into the subject that we were talking about and begin to relate this to this new fact that we now have disclosure being made by world governments. What's next? Are we going to actually see something really happen in the universe? Is there something about to really cross in our solar system? Are we seeing revelation of new realities? Are they going to start using technologies? Listen, I'm reading a paper right now, 5G, folks. Think about this. I'm reading this white paper, a little over my head in the medical terminology, but I get what they're getting at. They have now measured what Wi-Fi, electromagnetic fields and frequencies at different megahertz, particularly between the 18 gigahertz, it's 23 gigahertz to 47 gigahertz. What happens to the membrane of cells and what they do to the reaction of nanospheres. Holy crap. I mean, is this what 5G is all about? Something. All right, folks. I'll see you later. Thank you all, Suji, Brian, all the moderators. Thank every one of you. Appreciate y'all so much. Here you go. This is what I will say to everyone. There you go, folks. So treat yourself well, be kind to yourself, and we'll see you real soon. All right. Bye-bye.